ultimately manipulated by the same force. And we believe the movie when it's just a scam to bring in the agenda. And just a quick one on that. If you want to control a game, and these guys are obsessed with controlling the outcome before the movie starts. And if you want to control a football match, and you control one side, you're going to influence the football match, but you don't know what the result's going to be before a ball's kicked because there's another side you don't control. So in all debates, whether it's more power in the centralization of Europe or whether it's GM foods or whatever, they try to control both sides of the debate, give the illusion in the movie of some kind of free choice and debate while knowing the outcome before it starts. What have they decided about GM food? They're going to introduce it. What have they decided about putting fluoride in British water? They're going to introduce it. What have they decided about going more and more into the European superstate? They're going to do it. Those decisions have long been made. All the rest is just giving us the illusion of we're having some kind of say. Now this is the greatest form of imprisonment. It's what I call the prison without the bars. What happened was, eventually, the colonial powers of Europe, like the British Empire, they reached the point with their colonies around the world where they could no longer hold on to that power overtly, because the people were starting to kick up a stink. So they, in the movie, gave those countries independence from the colonial power in Europe. What actually happened is they swapped one form of dictatorship for another. And then the other is the most potent form of dictatorship at all. The one there's two forms of dictatorship. There's one that you can see, touch, taste, and experience. Fascism, communism, whatever. Centralization of power with a dictator, and you know he's a dictator. It may take some time, but eventually the desire for freedom in the human heart will rebel against that kind of dictatorship because you can see it. You can focus on it. The greatest form of dictatorship is the hidden hand, which gives you the illusion of freedom while fundamentally controlling your lives, because people do not rebel against not being free when they believe they are. So like I say, what happened was when the colonial powers apparently pulled out of North America, pulled out of Africa, pulled out of Asia, and Australia, and all these other countries, they left behind their secret society network and the bloodlines that they're so obsessed with, and they have gone on controlling those countries ever since, while the people of those countries have believed they were free. The prison without the bars. And this spider's web I'm talking about allows that process to happen. And the spider, that which is really calling the shots, really orchestrating the centralization of global power, the fascist state, is not among those that we see. If you can see them, they're still gophers. Maybe powerful gophers on the level they operate, like Bush or Blair or whatever, but they're still gophers. The people really behind this you never see, because why are they going to put themselves on public display where they can be identified and targeted? There's a wonderful example. I give you, I spent a lot of time in South Africa in recent years. I've become a great friend of a man called Credo Mutwa, who is the official historian of the Zulu nation. Wonderful man. And he's filled me in on so many things that went on there during the apartheid regime, but this is a classic example. During apartheid, you had an in-your-face dictatorship. You knew where you stood. You were in a situation of control by the few. As a result of that, there was rebellion within South Africa, quite right, because they knew where they were. All across the world there were all these protests. There were sanctions, there were all these things, because the people around the world could see it. Apartheid. Control. At that time, a few families in South Africa owned the gold mines, they owned the diamond mines, and they controlled at least, and is at least, 80% of the South African stock market. Then we had this movement to give a vote to black people in South Africa. Quite right. Mandela was brought into the presidency. We now have Thabo and Becky. Today, in South Africa, there have been changes on the surface, yes. But who actually controls the lives of the people in South Africa? Today, all these years later, those same families that controlled the gold mines and the diamond mines and the stock market and the media before apartheid continue to do so. But what has happened since? What has happened now? No rebellion! Where's all the protests of the placards around the world? Human rights in South Africa, that people are not free. All gone. Because of the movement from in-your-face dictatorship to hidden hand control. And that has happened all over the world. Now, one of the things that I found as I went through this, and in this first section, I'm just going to look at some of the different elements of it, a little bit of history, and then after we've had a break, I'm going to big time go into what's happening today. Stunning stuff, that is. Crikey, you couldn't make that up. The thing that I started to realize is that these people were not just obsessed with bloodline, and what obsessed with bloodline? Crikey, it's just a body to experience this reality, but it's important to them for some reason, which we'll get to. But they're also obsessed with symbolism, utterly obsessed with it, and there's a reason for that which I'll get to later as well. And like I said, a lot of their symbolism comes from ancient Babylon and that kind of area, and even going further back. And a part of that is an obsession with the goddess. The Illuminati goddess keeps coming up all the time as well. So the way they structure themselves are like a secret society. You have all these different degrees within a secret society. Unlike in the Freemasons, the vast majority of Freemasons don't get any higher than the bottom 3 levels of degree, the so-called blue degrees. So when people say, it's the Freemasons, well, hold on a minute. There's a lot of Freemasons, and the overwhelming vast majority of them have no comprehension of what their organization is being used for. It's not the anyone. It's this network that works through all these different organizations and controls them covertly. Only a few within the Freemasons actually know what the real deal is. Most of them just, good for a bit of business in the local community, wheel the wife out for the dinner once a year and have these silly rituals. I don't understand what they are, but then it gets you in. That's the level we're talking about. But within that organization are people that do know the deal and are using that Freemasonic network to advance it. And some of these secret societies, which use this goddess symbolism, which I'll get to in a second, and these other symbolic things that are all around us, go back a very, very long time. The Freemasons did not begin in the, 1700s like they claim. That was just when they moved and called themselves another name. This thing goes back to the far ancient world. And just to give you an idea of that, I just want to pick 3 secret societies up that were formed around the time of the Crusades. In the 1100s they were formed and through into the 1200s. And they were formed in that area of the world, Jerusalem, that kind of area, during the Crusades in that period, like I say. One of them was called the Teutonic Knights, that relate to Germany. And that Teutonic Knight network continues today, and it was that network in Germany in the 20th century that created the Nazi Party and brought it to power. Another one, formed around the same time in the same area of the world, was called the Knights Hospitaller of St. John of Jerusalem, which in its Catholic version today is known as the Knights of Malta. The official head is the Pope, and in its Protestant version is known as the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, and the official head is the Monarch of England. The one I just want to follow just for a few minutes to give you just an idea of how secret societies in the ancient world have come through to the present day, is to talk about one that was formed again at the same time as the other two, basically, called the Knights Templar. This was an organization, came out of France and came to Jerusalem, and there were only about 9 of them. And they parked themselves next to Temple Mount, and their official story is that they were formed to protect pilgrims visiting the Holy Land.